This moment in front of you feels a lot like the very first time I met Steve Jobs. It was somewhat daunting and somewhat exhilarating at the same time. Now, I wish I could tell you that the story went really well and the meeting was highly successful, but it was not. In fact, the very first words that Steve Jobs said to me was a swear word. And I'm going to tell you what it is. The reason that he had come back from the Exodus was to save Apple. That was his job. My job in that moment was to present the entire business review of my product team. And so there was a lot riding on that particular moment. And behind me, on some really big slides, sort of like what might be behind me right now, was something that said channel manager or channel development manager. And so the very first words that Steve Jobs says to me was not hi or moi. It was not, hey, how do you say your name? Which I would have hoped he might have wanted to know, because I was sort of hoping to impress him right about then, which, by the way, is Nilofer. No, these were the very first words that Steve Jobs said to me, and I apologize for the vernacular. But his words are so instructive for how business is going to work today that I'm going to go ahead and use his language. So remember, the slide says channel manager, and Steve Jobs' first words to me were, fuck the channel. And I looked over my team that had been, we had been working for weeks to get our action plan together. And so I looked over at them sort of like in the corner like, what do I do now? And they looked back equally like, back. And so I proceeded on, hoping that somehow magic would happen and I would impress him. But it didn't really seem to sway him at all, what it was that we presented. The reason I was the one pulling together this business plan, I was all of 20-something years old, it was 1997, was that the product team I had been in charge of had grown from $2 million to $180 million in 18 months. It was by far the most profitable part of the company at the time. Every other product line was declining, both in revenues and in profit, and ours was growing in both. So I expected the moment to be, good, but not so much. And in fact, I ended up finishing the presentation sort of like, I'll say it as assuredly as I possibly can, and then run out of the room and hope somehow it will get better. In fact, I actually went back to my office and typed a little note back to someone who had offered me a job somewhere else. Because I was like, yes, that does seem like a very good idea right now. And about a year later, I ran into the colleague who had taken over my role. And I expected to offer condolences, like, oh, you must have gotten a new job, or you must be looking for a new job, and how can I help? And instead, he said, actually, we're doing great. We're doing everything that you set out in the plan. It's going fantastically. And here's where I learned that leaders need to hold two things as true. They need to both run towards the future and figure out how to let us let go of what we're currently doing well, but also manage the day-to-day. It's such a complex thing to manage a business because you have to figure out how to both invent and hold true. And never more so is that true than today. The rate of change, as every speaker that has stood up here has talked about, the rate of change is growing, and our ability to keep up with it is daunting. And so the one lesson that I want to pass on is not swearing, although I think it has its place. The Finnish maybe don't think so, no. The one lesson I really hope that all of us get from a presentation or from the lesson of Jobs is this. It's never a question of if the change is going to happen, but how do we actually get ready for that change? Now, I've been writing and talking about something I call the social era. Some people call the digital era. Some people call the knowledge economy. Some people call the connected economy. But for a second, when I use the word social, tell me, what do you think of? People. Usually people say media. I love it. So for a minute, do something with me. All 5,500 of you, my goodness. All 5,500. Do something. Act social for a minute. Go. What did you learn? What was that like? What did you do? I got to meet a lot of nice people over here who actually all came up and said hi. 5 different people. They said the conference was going really well and that so far the speech is okay. What else did you hear? What else did you see about each other? What was social like? Warm? Entertaining? What'd you guys do? Anyone? You guys asked questions? You got to know each other? You did marketing to each other? That's great. I love it. That's what networking's about, man. You could have watched this on live stream, but you're here. You might as well make the pitch. What else? You talked about me? Was it all right? All right. Don't make me insecure about making me like self-meta, whatever. Okay. So my point in the exercise was social is, as always, the thing that people really do well. We connect, we listen, we ask questions, we're curious, we shake hands, we make eye contact, we understand what it is to be in relationship with each other. It is the thing that humans actually do deeply well. And anytime we make it about technology, we're missing the point. The best technology we have is idea technology, which is about how we connect together, right? So when I use social, I'm always using it about relationships, and I wanted to just make that point. What does success in the social era, the way we've just characterized it, about human beings being deeply connected together, how does success work in modern times? And because my husband is a complete geek, he sometimes makes me translate some super soft topics into equations. Physics major, can't help himself. And so at one point, I was having this conversation with him about, what success looks like. And I said, it's a function, I'm an econ major, it's a function of this thing of talent and purpose and culture. And over the years, I have come back to this equation year over year, kind of perfecting what it means. So what I want to do is walk through the 3 elements and how they're different in the social era as compared to the old times. The shift is that relationships are, to this modern time, what efficiency was to the last era. Relationships. What are relationships built on? Trust. This guy's like, perfect. I don't even know you. Perfect, both times. 2 out of 2. Somebody should give him a book, by the way. Trust. Relationships are built on trust, and trust is about looking at people in the eye and saying, yes, I want to work with you. Yes, I have something in common with you. Yes, we are one. And so then what does that look like in the success equation? So let's just click down on it. What does it look like from talent's perspective? There's a woman here who, when her start of her career, when she was 30, she started working in banking. And she worked in banking long enough where she actually started becoming the office manager and found that her greatest passion in life was actually meeting with people. Because it turns out when people come into the bank, they always come in with a major life issue. Like they're thinking about how to retire, or maybe how to take care of their older parents. So it turns out that the major reason we have conversations with bankers is about life choices. And yet, here's what she was allowed at her organization. She was told you can only meet with people in 15-minute increments. So talk about your whole life, but in a 15-minute increment. And if you don't bring all the right paperwork, we can't finish up that thing. You have to schedule a whole new appointment. And she found herself incredibly frustrated that the things she knew to do well and her passion, which was to help people really think strategically about the role of money in their life, she wasn't allowed to do. Not as much as she knew was needed. Because she knew if she could solve that person's problem, right, what were they going to do? They were going to go tell the next person. And that would cause growth. But instead, what she was asked to do was creating a marketing plan. A marketing plan for a 12-person organization. She had to write and come up with ideas for what would happen. She had to do a lot of paperwork to do it. And then, in the end of the day, did it really make any difference? So her work became much more about figuring out how to fit into the bureaucracy of the organization and less about the passion and knowledge that she brought. And today, she's now retired, and she gets to do this all the time. And she has people call her from all around Finland to ask her for her advice. And her daughter, Mina, who I met last night for dinner, says to me, her mom is now 10 times more productive than she was when she worked at an organization. Now think about that. The organization, when they were asking her to do a marketing plan or they were asking her to focus on 15-minute increments, they were trying to figure out how to make her efficient, productive. Were they actually doing that? No. How many of our organizations do that to people? What they're doing in the process is denying the meaning that each of us wants at work. And we do it in the premise or the idea that somehow if we just get you to fit into a particular box, you will be successful and create scale. But it's actually diminishing the thing that each of us actually want to bring into work. There was a time when value creation happened because of the machine. And then there was a time when value creation was about how much we could produce in a particular kind of line. And then there was a time when it was about how much capital could we throw at a problem because that's what would create scale. And today, what creates value in modern times is ideas.